everybody. Welcome to the Make the Money and Run podcast for May 7th, 2021, powered by Stables Media. I'm Vasi Vadaparty. Coming up on this podcast with Casey Freelove, the Major League Baseball preview for the weekend. A lot of sweeps, a lot of four-game sweeps this weekend. Albert Pujols had nothing to do with the Angels' kerosene bullpen, and good games in the NBA last night. We'll preview the last few games of the regular season, and also a couple of hockey notes, some upsets on the minus 250 and above lines last night. So that's why I brought that up yesterday. If you missed yesterday, you can download and subscribe anywhere on Apple or Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeart, CWBest, or anywhere you get your podcast. Thanks to everybody on Facebook Live. You got any questions, send it on Facebook Live or any of the YouTube channels that we have going. We're live, we're streaming, we're good to go. I'm ready for a weekend. And Saturday baseball for me is right here in San Francisco. So Padres Giants, big series this weekend in San Francisco with the NL leading Giants. And, of course, across the bay, the Oakland A's have the best record in the American League after splitting their series with the Toronto Blue Jays. Vasi Vadaparty. Hi, Casey Freelove. How are you?
Hello. Doing just fine. Looking forward to a big baseball weekend. And, of course, something we'll talk about later in the show is the inevitability of defense showing up in the NBA and why unders might be a good play, despite the fact that, generally overs have kind of been the way to go this year, Vasu. I know you and I talk about this off the air a lot, but something has to change a little bit. And I know we discussed it yesterday, but we're going to see basically the coaching minds who have the ears of their players will start playing some defense, and you'll start seeing some games a little lower scoring, in my opinion. By lower scoring, I mean less than 110 points per game. Like the pick I gave out last night, Pistons Grizzlies. That one flew under it. 222.5 was the total. Your final score in that one was only 111-97. Now, I'm glad that I went with a total play and not the team play, because logic would dictate that a Memphis Grizzlies team trying to claw their way into the playoffs would beat one of the worst teams in the entire NBA in the form of the Detroit Pistons, who are tanking and trying to get a better lottery pick. But isn't that part of the beauty of gambling, my friend? Buy the ticket, take the ride. All you can do is load yourself up with knowledge and let the chips fall where they will.
No doubt about it. Thanks to everybody again on Facebook Live. Just getting one upstate here. I posted it this morning. The Cubs were minus 147, and 7.5 was the total with Zach Davies, who had an 8.82 ERA coming into the game. Shut them down for 7 innings, although the Pirates had the bases loaded and nobody out. It was an early play on the Cubs. It's 3-0, top of the 7th. In Wrigley, where the wind is blowing in, Trevor Cahill was not much better, a 7.82 ERA coming in to the game right now. So I'll be keeping an eye on that for my first, hopefully, win of the day. Going into tonight, it was a big day in Major League Baseball. How about Major League Baseball? Let's get to the Major League Baseball notes here. We'll get the odds up in a second. But in Major League Baseball last night, we talked about the Tampa Bay Rays. We made fun of Andrew Heaney. Andrew Heaney pitched well last night, and the Angels still lost. It still had nothing to do with Albert Pujols being released, but the bullpen clearly kerosened themselves. Milwaukee gets swept by Philadelphia this week. They go into a big series, believe it or not, against the Miami Marlins, who were playing really well. They beat Madison Bumgarner last night. The Phillies, who swept Milwaukee in 4 straight, visit Atlanta in a big NL East showdown. St. Louis had their winning streak stabbed by the Mets yesterday. They host the Rockies. And then big weekends, as I said, in San Francisco, they've got the Padres. The White Sox will visit Kansas City, who also got swept in a 4-game series at home by Cleveland. The Blue Jays split here in Oakland with the A's. They'll go to Houston. And then in Ohio, the Reds and Indians in their annual rivalry, the Cincinnati-Cleveland rivalry. And then in SoCal, the Dodgers on a bad losing streak right now. They are going to those Angels in Anaheim for a 3-game series with Julio Urias and Griffin Canning pitching. Some of the notes in baseball preview in the weekend, Casey. What do you like so far?
Well, I mean, it's interesting to see so many 4-game sweeps, because that kind of goes against a gambler's logic, where, some people do this ABC system where they'll go against a team until they pick up a victory. But, in a 60-40 sport like this, streaks are kind of what are going to build or destroy your bankroll. I mean, a lot of these teams, for example, you cited the Royals, that nobody had any clue were going to play this well, or the Cleveland Indians sitting atop the AL Central. That's where you make your money, because you'll find more balanced lines. You're not going to see so many minus 2-1 and, over 2-1, which I know you mentioned you got a little hockey taste of that later. But the bottom line is, as a bettor, you've got to find lines that are not ridiculous. And by ridiculous, I mean, inflated 170 or more. and try and grind it out. Or on the flip side, if you can find teams that are typically going to be a little less value than you think they should have, you'll make money on that. I mean, I love when I can win at like plus 105. Don't get greedy and think you're going to hit a bunch of plus 150, 160s, going against really good pitchers. But if you can find lines that are a little closer to even money, it does seem to help balance things out. And again, as we've talked about time and time again, we could do a whole episode on how much different betting baseball is as far as paying attention to your bankroll compared to other sports. So I'm excited for the weekend. There are some great series, some teams near the top. You've got the Rays, who just swept the Angels. You mentioned it there. They're coming into Oakland to take on the A's. They lost to the Blue Jays yesterday, but those are two of the best records in the American League. That's going to be fun. Blake Snell against Anthony DeSclafani tonight in San Francisco certainly looks like it's going to be fun as well. Padres minus 140. That total very low at over under 7. Weather right now looks like it's going to be beautiful in San Francisco for the first pitch. So no wind, and that one could be a low-scoring affair. Another thing, and I'll throw it back to you on this, Dodgers Angels, it seems like every year the team that is favored does not do well in this series. Like whoever the underdog is, and the Angels are really now at 13-17. They got Griffin Canning on the mound against Julio Urias, and there's that line that I don't know if I can bet this, minus 160 for LA. And it seems like oftentimes we do see the team, whether it's the Dodgers or Angels, that's struggling at the time of this I-10 series starting, basically step up and win a game or two. So I think that'll be a fun one to watch as well. And it's a pretty big weekend. It looks like they paired it up in a way that they know they're going to get some eyes on baseball, which isn't a bad thing. And I can't believe we're almost already at the quarter mark, Vasu. It feels like we just threw out first pitch yesterday.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we're almost 6 weeks into the games here, and 2021 has definitely gone a little bit faster. You can keep up with the odds at the bottom as we go through all the baseball. Vasu and Casey here. Let's look at these NL games as I took it off by accident. By the way, Charlie's on assignment today. He's getting checked up for maladies and melodies and everything that's happened to him the last few years. So hopefully everything goes well. And as I always say, when you have to go to the doctor, hopefully your nurse is cute to make the visit go by faster. So Charlie, have a good day over there wherever you're.
That's what really matters.
They should send the cute nurses in to me to tell me that something is really bad, honestly, because then I can at least focus half on her and half on what the hell I have to do to get myself healthy again. All right, let's before we alienate half our female audience, I don't want to say how sexist I am, but I'm not sexist, I promise. Trevor Rogers pitching for the Miami Marlins tonight. He's been their best pitcher. ERA about 1.5. He did have a tough game last week. I forgot who they played, but the Miami Marlins, we talked yesterday, plus run differential, the only team with plus run differential in the East, and they're in last place. They did beat Madison Bumgarner last night. Bumgarner looked really good, but so did Pablo Lopez, who pitches very well for future wagerers. The Miami Marlins and Lopez at home is a pretty good 2-to-1 proposition in terms of his wins and losses, home versus road. 136, 6.5 the total, and that goes to Rogers, how well he pitches. Brent Suter, the Milwaukee Brewers all of a sudden cannot hit. Christian Yelich has tried to come back with a bad back. He came back for one game. They put him on the IL again. He and Kane came back. They didn't get anything going in Philadelphia. And Philadelphia is a hitter's ballpark, and they got 8 runs in 4 games against the Phillies, who aren't great, and their bullpen's not great. And Zach looked the complete game yesterday morning West Coast time. So we'll see. I'll be interested to see how far Miami can catch up because Atlanta, Philadelphia playing each other in the West. There's no guarantee the Mets are hitting right now. And Arizona is second in the National League in runs scored. They're going into New York, and I can imagine Arizona going in there and sweeping them. They've had pretty good success in the past in New York. Zach Gallen, their best pitcher right now. Sorry, Madison Bumgarner, but Zach Gallen, the best pitcher right now for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's a plus 117, the total 7 there. And then you said San Francisco, San Diego. Stay classy, San Diego. They lose this weekend. Blake Snell, you're going to go more than 5 innings today, Blake?
Right.
Here's a problem with Blake Snell. He throws 4 great innings, and then all of a sudden he's all over the place, as you can tell by his walk totals. He averages 13 strikeouts per 9 innings, which is unbelievable. But the fact that the Giants had 28 strikeouts in their first 54 plate appearances in the first 2 games against San Diego last weekend before they got the win last Sunday. DeSclafani pitching at home. He's going to do great at home. And the fact that he's a $1.30 underdog, $1.32 officially on the screen, $1.32 underdog at home, a fly ball pitcher at night at Oracle Park, tells me that they've got a shot to do this. And if they can get a couple of clutch hits off Blake Snell, I think they've got a good shot to win. And in fact, I probably will take San Francisco tonight. We'll get to the picks officially later. But San Francisco, San Diego, the Dodgers and the Angels, Colorado, and Arizona, the NL West, Casey.
Well, let's before we break down the individual matchups, have you put on your pitching cap from back in the day and talk a little bit about the psychology of Blake Snell, because I think you laid it out pretty well there as far as, he gets out there, he warms up well, he comes out in the first inning pretty well. He's not allowing a whole lot of runs there, but he's not even getting through the second time through the lineup before he starts to struggle. So my question is, with a pitcher like that, who's kind of tried and true and has shown that, he is very capable of pitching very well in long stretches, is it a mental thing? Is it still adjusting to the new team, adjusting to being in a different league? I mean, what if you're the pitching coach there? What are you telling Blake next time that he gets on the mound, or tonight while he's warming up? What are you saying to him to kind of get rid of those yips once it gets to the fourth inning?
Yeah, I don't know, Casey. That's hard to say. I've never pitched in a big league game, but warming up, it might have something to do with warming up. He may be using too many bullets in the bullpen, and he just goes through it, or he's going through max effort the first 3 innings. To me, using max effort as a starting pitcher does not allow you to go further in games. And the fact that he does lose his control the second time around, I don't know if he's using other pitches the second time around because they've seen his pitches the first time. I couldn't tell you from the standpoint of physically, I can see what he's doing. He's walking people, and the mechanics look the same, and the stuff is there, but it's just missing. And I don't know what causes that or what it does. But obviously, if you're on the mound, think of it like putting. If you're sitting over a putt and you haven't made putts the previous few holes before,
right,
it's going to be in your head. If you can't throw strikes and you walk a guy in 4 batters, all of a sudden here comes the next guy and you missed the first 2, and then you got to regroup yourself. I don't know what mentality you have to go through, but I don't understand it because he's got too good of stuff to have that out of control. And there have been years, his Cy Young year, he only walked 2.5 guys for 9 innings, and that's been totally different since then. So I'll be interested to see. That's a good park for pitchers. He is a fly ball pitcher as well too. So Padres don't hit though; they haven't hit. I just don't think they're a very good hitting team. Tatis Machado aside, a lot of their guys, Jay Cronenworth has proved to be a good second baseman and a good leadoff hitter, and every once in a while he'll hit cleanup against a right-hander. But if you're relying on Jay Cronenworth to be one of your run producers on a team that has Tatis Machado, then you might be lacking a little bit.
Well, and I think the media maybe overhyped them a little bit as far as the offense, because
we all did, Casey. We all did, though.
The Tatis thing, obviously, look, he's a superstar, as you talked about. Hosmer is, he's leading the team. He's got, I think, he's batting 289. He's got 33 hits, but then it falls off quite a bit, as you mentioned. I'm also looking at the injury reports for both teams, and they've got a lot of guys that are ailing a little bit. Giants, look, they're one of the big surprise teams in Major League Baseball, 18-13. Little surprised that they are getting you back plus 132 right now. I guess it's because they know the public still, likes the Padres, likes betting on the Dodgers, and even stupidly likes betting on the Yankees. If we're talking about the quote glamour teams, I'm looking at the consensus on OddsShark. 52% of the cash is on the Padres. I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't go to an even 50-50 split. And as you're noticing, with some good pitching on the mound in the National League, which we're talking about here on the podcast, a lot of totals tonight, under 8. This Giants game's totals at over under 7. And even a garbage team like the Colorado Rockies, who's going to St. Louis, decent pitchers on the mound, totals at 7.5. So got to be real careful when you're making your bets on these particular matchups. You mentioned the Brewers and Marlins earlier. The Brewers, another team, as I'm pulling up their injury report, just a whole lot of guys on there and a lot of brand name guys that you're going to need to perform. Now, I am surprised that they're on a 5-game losing streak, because they kind of, I'm not going to say they surpassed expectations. I think we all knew Milwaukee was going to be pretty good, but 17-15, 9-7 away from home, and they're getting you back $1.18 if you want to bet it. This, Vasu, is the lowest total on the road, on the board, I should say, today, at just 6.5 runs. Now, Miami's playing 500 ball at home. The Brewers 9-7 in their road games, and the Marlins did win the last meeting 6-2. In fact, I remember last week, got together in Milwaukee, a guy that both you and I follow a little bit on Facebook in our gambling groups. He went in big on the Brewers one day, and the Marlins ended up beating them like 8-0. It was very surprising.
That was the Corbin Burns game. Corbin Burns game when he's going for the record.
Yeah, and so the Marlins are at 14-16. I'd have to pull up my totals here as far as the plus money, but I would suspect even with that under 500 record, they're getting you back so much plus money every time you bet on them typically that you're probably in good shape with them. So that's a game I'll probably stay away from, but I certainly will take a look at it as far as the fan perspective, because I think as a gambler, I need to be mixing in teams like Miami a little bit more than I have, and not just kind of leaning on my stalwart teams like, the Oakland A's or teams like that.
As far as these National League games, obviously San Francisco, San Diego, I'll be paying attention to. They'll be on the network on your local Fox station tomorrow, on your FS1 station tomorrow. Actually, the St. Louis, Colorado game, I was just thinking about it. It slipped my mind a little bit because we're looking at all the games right now. Austin Gomber was the prize trade pick for Nolan Arenado. He pitched well in St. Louis, so you got to think he might be a little amped up to face his teammates tonight. Jack Flaherty's been one of the best pitchers in baseball, 3.1 ERA, right around 3. His walk to strikeout ratio is really good. He just doesn't walk guys. We've talked about this before. Jack Flaherty, Lucas Giolito, and Max Fried, all 3 aces on their staff. They were all on one high school team back in Southern California. So Jack Flaherty and Giolito and Max Fried, all aces, have all proved to be outstanding major leaguers. 205 doesn't seem like a stretch for Colorado. You would probably take St. Louis in that scenario, but Austin Gomber has shown that he can pitch a little bit. Colorado did want him back in the Arenado trade. And you don't think Nolan Arenado's a little excited to see Colorado this weekend, especially if he's been slumping like he was slumping for a little bit there in the beginning. Colorado pitching will get you out of a slump no matter where you're at, whether it's or in St. Louis, and he knows these guys. And you know what? If he puts too much pressure on him, then they can shut him down for the weekend too. Paul Goldschmidt only hitting about 120 coming into the week. He's gotten a little hot now, and then right now Arenado and Goldschmidt not hitting very well. In fact, Goldschmidt had sat out a couple of games last week with Carpenter filling in for him at first base. Carpenter not even starting now for the Cardinals as well too. And this is a guy who had 32 home runs a few years ago. He's not starting because Tommy Edmonds played so well for St. Louis. So I'll be interested in the St. Louis Colorado series, the Arenado dynamic. First time they're playing the Rockies, and then when he goes back to Colorado, I'm assuming that's like July or August when they go back. It'll be interesting to see not only the reception he gets, it should be a good one because he's a franchise player. He and Todd Helton are franchise players for all those years. But Austin Gomber, a good left-hander, and you take him out of Colorado, and the way the Cardinals' bats have been going lately, he might be a good 180 underdog right now if Flaherty's going 205. 7.5, they may not get to 7.5 tonight the way both teams are swinging the bat either. So we may have to – I got 45 minutes to make a decision here if I add them on my list or not. But definitely I'm definitely looking at Miami. I'm definitely looking at the Atlanta-Philadelphia series because both teams are near the top, and Atlanta generally takes care of Philadelphia there in Atlanta. But Charlie Morton has not had a good start. Zach Eflin has been okay, but they're without Bryce Harper. The Phillies did not score a lot of runs either, but for some reason their pitching shut down the Brewers, who are pretty hot right now. By the way, the Cubs got out of that bases loaded jam with no runs in the top of the 7th inning. They got a ground ball to the pitcher, and then they got a double play. It's 3-0 bottom of the 7th. I'm looking at that because I posted on Instagram. That was my first play of the day. So by the time the end of the show is over, let's go 1-0 to start the day going into the weekend. Casey.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. By the way, Rockies bettors, not too much cash on them. They're 2-11 away from course. So we can't blame the altitude for that. That's not very good as far as through 13 games. But, hey, you want to throw them in on a parlay or maybe have some fun with the run line, that might be a team to take a look at. Now, a game that I will have a play on is one of the few interleague games going on, an interleague series this weekend. A couple of teams that I think you should keep an eye on if you're a bettor. Indians 17-13. I would say outperforming what we may have thought coming into the year as far as being 4 games above 500. The Reds at 14-15 are a bit of a surprise as well. A lot of people have them as just a total basement dweller, but since everybody's around 500, they've got a chance. And you've got, kind of a contrast, old and new. Zach Plesac, 2-3, 4.7 ERA. Wade Miley, who's been around forever for Cleveland on the mound. Indians minus 140, and the total at over under 8. Now, I was looking through all the different sites I comb over when I'm making my selections for the day, and it feels like weather's going to be a factor here. It looks like it's going to be kind of a cold and gloomy night there in Ohio. The rain might even be coming down a little bit, and perhaps the wind blowing in, which we've talked about time and time again. You've got to factor into your handicapping. You were discussing that with Chicago early on. A couple of teams that don't really have, quote unquote mashers. I'm looking at the Indians. In fact, they don't have a single hitter batting really even near 300 right now. Reyes, the DH, is at 283, but other than that, not a whole lot of pop there. A little different for the Reds, but I think that This game is going to be a fun one to keep an eye on. I do like that total right there at 8, especially, and I'll check the weather report as we move through the hour, but I think that's going to be a game that's probably going to be played pretty low scoring, in my opinion. So you do have a little interleague there, and I know we'll talk here in a moment about the rest of the slate with the AL.
The interleague games I'm looking at, obviously the Yankees, they did not sweep the Astros. Garrett Cole on the mound, the bullpen gave it up to Houston yesterday. You mentioned Cincinnati. Cleveland just came off the first time in a long time. I don't know how many years. I forgot to look that up. Sweeping Kansas City in Kansas City over a 4-game series. And Zach Plesac is going tonight against Wade Miley. The total is 8. Cincinnati's stunk ever since they came out red hot. They have just stunk right now. And the Indians on a 4-game winning streak on the road. Coming back home, you've got to think that Cleveland team has got to be right there. They've gotten key hits. The averages were down in the beginning of the year. I think a lot of that has to do with the weather in Cleveland. You always see the Indians averages go up May, June, and July, and then they make a run, and then they end up taking over the division. So I don't think we really thought Kansas City was going to stay at the top of the division, but Cleveland and the White Sox were the two primary teams going into the year. If Kansas City stays in, good for Mike Matheny. He's learned a lot, made a lot of mistakes in St. Louis, but I think he's got a pretty good team in Kansas City, and they may be a year away. And who knows, they may end up pulling Pujols in there because Matheny played with them, and they need some pop in the offense there. They're not known for their offense, and they've got a pretty good pitching staff right now. So as far as competing with the White Sox, competing with the Indians, the Royals right now are still in there. Anything else on this interleague screen here before we move on?
Well, no, I mean, let's just bounce it into the AL because you just mentioned it. We could call this the Pujols series because yesterday, obviously, as I'm doing my sports report for my radio station, I'm looking at the White Sox. I'm looking at Tony La Russa. I'm looking at needs at designated hitter. Then you just mentioned the Kansas City Royals. That's what we should be able to get a bet on right now. I want to be able to log on to my website and say, which one of these two teams will Albert end up on? Because I'm sorry, National League fans, there's no place for him to play first base. He's not going back to St. Louis unless he signs a one-day contract to retire there. And I think that even if he's not your everyday guy, what a great utility player to have an option as if you are an American League team, a la Kansas City or the White Sox. He's a great fit there.
Let's start out with the Oakland A's, best record in the American League, best record in baseball. They did lose yesterday to Toronto. They split the series against the Blue Jays. Blue Jays came back. Boy, they've got some good young hitters, and they're going to go back to Buffalo starting June 1st when it starts to get warm so they can get out of that spring training stadium. Some of these over-unders for the Blue Jays may start coming down when they go back to Buffalo, although based on what happened in Buffalo last year, that minor league park, they were scoring a ton of runs there, and they've got young guys on that team with Guerrero and Bichette and Biggio, and some of their pitching's okay, and I don't know about their relief pitching. I haven't watched a lot of Toronto baseball, but everybody knows that their offense is really good, and they're starting to put some runs up. So I would start looking at totals for them as well. So, but let's start with the A's tonight. It's the only game we got right now up here. 124 with Sean Manaea, Rich Hill going for Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay just came out. It's coming up from Anaheim off a 4-game winning streak, or probably a 6-game winning streak now, but a 4-game winning streak against the Angels. They swept them. Bullpen had a lot to do with that with the Angels. Rays came back twice. The Ohtani game, Brandon Lau hit a home run when they were down 1-0, and they ended up winning that game 3-1. Yesterday, I had the over 8.5 in that. That was just a late pick for me, and all of a sudden it was 1-0, nothing, and then a 7-run seventh for the Rays. Ended up taking that game over off Mike Myers and Felix Pena in that Angels bullpen. Not exactly household names, but they ended up getting that win. Rays held them off, and here they come into Oakland off the loss against Toronto, off the split against Toronto. Casey, you follow the A's, you know the A's. What do you think this weekend? It's going to be a good series, though.
Oh, it's a great tester series, and I love that the Rays are back there. They're like that fly in the ointment. You know, people forget. Oh yeah, they were in the World Series last year, and yes, they did lose some of their frontline pitching, but they still got a lot of those young bats under contract for a few more years. And of course, the A's overachieving as they've done ever since that garbage start. I posted something on Facebook, and despite me, they went and won 13 games in a row, and now they're 19-14, 11-10 at home. Look, 43 home runs as a team this year, including Ramon Laureano, who's got 7. Very impressive with the way he's come out of the box. Interestingly, Rich Hill is 1-1, and you talk about digging deeper into these pitching records. You've got to look at exactly what's happened. He's got a 12 ERA on the road, Vasu. So if the A's are looking to bat around a little bit, perhaps they will. As far as the total goes in this game, again, these teams played a low-scoring affair the last time they got together, which was just last week down in South Florida. I understand it's different elements, being indoor versus outdoor, weather in the Bay Area at night. This total opened at 8. It's now at over under 7.5 if you're going to play it. Last time they got together, 3-2 was the final for the A's with the victory. And I think that what it comes down to is Oakland's been kind of back to, win one, lose one, win one, lose one, which is a little more par for the course in Major League Baseball over the course of the season rather than winning 13 in a row, which is very difficult to do. And I think one of the reasons they're doing so is they're pretty much healthy. I know the closer role hasn't been 100% established because Trevor Rosenthal's missed a lot of playing time. And B, they've just got such consistency from 1 through 9, basically, in their batting lineup. Anybody can jump up. And Mark Canha can have a big game. There's all kinds of reasons why they're getting it done. And in my opinion, one of the best managers in all of baseball. But as far as watchable series over the course of the weekend, this is definitely one of them. And I think that, come Sunday, we could be looking at a 1 win here, 1 win there. Who's going to end up taking this series and walking away with a little bit of confidence? I will say this. I am pretty surprised, and I'm sure you were as well. Even if the Angels stink right now, it's not easy to go into an opposing team's ballpark outside when you're a dome team and pick up a 4-game sweep. So baseball's a game of streaks, and when a team's hot, sometimes you got to ride them. So as far as betting this game, Vegas has done a good job at setting it at Oakland minus 125 to kind of, keep it at a coin flip, if you will.
Bullpen's going to be key for the A's. They've struggled this year, and the Tampa Bay bats get hot late in the game. But you're right. One of the teams that went on the road and swept Cleveland, swept on the road. Philadelphia got a 4-game sweep at home, and then I think there was one other one that I missed too. But there were a lot of 4-game sweeps. There were 3 4-game sweeps this weekend. Let's check out the American League. Let's check out the other American League games we got going on here. Boston had a tough game yesterday against Detroit. They ended up sweeping Detroit, but they were down. That was with Evaldi. They go to Baltimore. Baltimore swept them on opening weekend with beating them 3 in a row in Boston, and then Boston comes back and sweeps them the next time. This is the first time they're playing each other since the sweep in Baltimore. They are going back to Baltimore. Matt Harvey's kind of had a little resurgence here. Eduardo Rodriguez going for the Red Sox. 8.5 the total here. I don't know about 8.5. That seems like a total that should be way up the way the Red Sox have been swinging the bat this year. I'll be interested to see how that is. Minnesota, boy, they lost to Texas yesterday in extra innings. They're just not a very good team right now. A lot of that is defense. And when we get back to that, and that's the thing that we were talking about the Giants yesterday. They're not hitting the ball, but they're playing great defense, and that's helping starting pitching. And I think that's going to benefit them because the Padres are throwing the ball around a little bit this weekend. But anyway, Minnesota throwing the ball around. They're going to Detroit. Taylor Skubal is the pitcher tonight. Tyler Skubal is the pitcher for the Tigers tonight. Every other Tigers starter has not pitched well this year except for Matthew Boyd. Matt Shoemaker, a little bit of a resurgence. Seattle is an underdog on the road at Texas. They have a tough time with Texas on the road, even though Texas isn't very good. Fulton Average, the former All-Star with the Braves, goes up against Chris Flexen, who was in the Korean League last year, but he's pitched well, and he's got a really good changeup. And I think Texas probably hasn't seen anybody throw like him in a while. And then the White Sox, the red-hot White Sox, $1.50 on the road at Kansas City, who just got swept by Cleveland. Carlos Rodon, the owner of a no-hitter this year, against Brad Keller for the Royals. I wonder if the Royals get off to Schneid now. It's tough to lose all these games at home in a row. But the White Sox, tough loss yesterday with the Reds, a tough loss the other day with the Reds in terms of the extra inning game and Liam Hendricks running the bases, etc. And then Toronto, who just left Oakland, who just left us here in the Bay Area, going to Houston with Jose Urquidy, one of the better pitchers out there in the American League, out there in baseball right now, surprisingly, against the former Dodger, Ross Stripling, who's had a pretty good time with Toronto so far since the trade over there. But I'll be interested to see how Toronto swings the bat in Houston in that ballpark against this Houston pitching staff, and specifically how Dusty Baker uses the bullpen against the Blue Jays case.
Yeah, what Astros basically minus $1.40 if you're going to take a look at it. And, my station does run the A's game, so I've heard a lot of the Toronto Blue Jays over the last few days. Look, they're a quality club. I think we all like this team. If you're, around our age group, Vasu, you grew up with most of these guys' dads, being a fan of them on the field. So they're a very interesting club. They've got a lot of power from top to bottom. I think Marcus Semien has kind of rounded into form and been a nice signing for that team, having been a former Oakland Athletic. He's got 7 home runs on the year. And these are two teams that are playing well coming into tonight. Astros 6-4 in their last 10, 3.1 earned run average as a staff. Blue Jays 7-3, outscoring their opponents by 20 runs on the season. And when I look down at the injury reports, not so many brand names aside from George Springer jumping out at you. So Toronto should be feeling pretty confident. They're 9-10 away from, quote, home. And maybe that's a topic we could talk about later in the show, just how amazing a team like this is because they can't play in their home ballpark. and they're just getting shipped all over the U.S., yet they're 2 games above 500. So I think that's going to be a real fun series all weekend long. Look, the Astros had their downtime, and they're still a game over 500 right now, despite having, a third of their relevant players get COVID. So I think their best baseball is certainly ahead. This is a matchup that will be a nice feel them out early on in the season. Now, you mentioned Boston and Baltimore, 2 of the best pitching records for starters in baseball, at least on tonight's slate. Eduardo Rodriguez, 4-0, 4.1 ERA. Matt Harvey, 3-1 with a 4.07 ERA. Now, you wonder, not that John Means can carry over anything. He's not going to be pitching tonight, but the confidence of being a part of a no-hitter and seeing this team finally pick up a really big victory that got him on SportsCenter as the top story and all that, that's got to make them feel good. It seemed like when they were talking to their manager, he was like, look, this team has been kind of right there and on the losing end of a lot of these games. Let's find a way to be right there and pick up some wins. And 15-16 for a team that we projected as the basement dweller in the NL East is not terrible. I think if I'm an O's fan, I'm probably pretty happy, actually, with the way that's gone. Let me take a quick look before we bounce back to here as far as consensus plays on this. So 61% of the cash is on Boston at minus $1.45. If you want to bet the O's, you take back 135, and then the total over under 8.5. Public seems to like that over at 71%. So that's another game you want to keep an eye on the weather. And look, we've had some dud weekends in Major League Baseball. I would say this is not one of them. I probably won't be watching Minnesota-Detroit too much because Detroit is just a horror show, and Minnesota has underachieved so much that they're not quite as enjoyable to watch either. And that's the highest total on the board today at over under 9, along with Toronto and Houston. So let it fly this weekend, and we'll figure it out. We'll do it together, folks. That's what we're trying to do. Make you build a better bankroll. That's what we're here to do for you.
I'm interested in Boston, Baltimore. I'm interested in Texas, Seattle a little bit because Seattle's played well this year. I'm interested in Houston, Toronto, and I am always interested in the White Sox as far as the American League teams. What about you in the American League? You just said Minnesota, Detroit, probably not on your radar tonight.
Not on the docket, if you will. Definitely keep an eye on Rodon. That guy
in the NL. In the NL, I'm looking forward to Miami, Milwaukee. Milwaukee in slump right now. Miami plays well at home, and they can get right back in that NL East race. Mets are always interesting because of the money being spent out. Francisco Lindor having a bad year so far to start. Hope he's not putting too much pressure. Zach Gallen, one of the best pitchers in the National League, that nobody talks about. He's on staff with Bumgarner, so nobody talks about him. Atlanta, Philadelphia, always a good series, always a lot of runs, always a lot of fireworks. And that series, Charlie Morton's had a rough start. Zach Eflin's been pretty good. The Arenado trade comes back tonight for the first time in St. Louis. I'll be watching that. Of course, I'll be covering the Padres and Giants weekend with the Saturday game being on Fox. In the interleague games, we're looking at. Go ahead, Casey. What do you like in the National League? I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Again, Phillies, Braves. The Phillies were my long shot. I liked them at 8.5 to 1 to win the NL East. And we're too early to worry about who's going to win the thing. But I think being 2 games over 500, they're not playing very well away from home. But they're definitely a competent team. The Braves already 8-8 against the National League East. I love what Ronald Acuna Jr. has done. Phillies 7-8 in division games. And the one problem that the Phillies have, and I know you like to talk about this statistic, their on-base percentage is 293, and that's last in the National League. That's not going to keep you in first place in your division if you're going to continue to struggle to get guys on base. Thankfully for them, Bryce Harper's had a nice year as well. And you said with Charlie Morton, who knows with the Braves. It's funny, these guys that come from these other markets and get on these new teams, and you expect them to still be the same brand name guy, but there's so much that goes into that. You're not playing with the same players, the same managerial techniques, the same pitching techniques. There's a lot of things that change when you change clubs. So I think Charlie Morton eventually, when all is said and done by the end of the year, will have a winning record, and maybe it starts tonight.
And they got to play better defense as well, too. One note on the Twins, Miguel Sano made the last out in the extra inning game yesterday, even with a runner at second. 115 batting average playing first base for the Minnesota Twins right now, leaving a lot of runners on base. In the interleague games, the Yankees are always interesting. Washington's playing a little bit better. They had a good series against the Braves. Patrick Corbin, one of the better left-handers. Yankees usually kill left-handed pitching. Jameson Taillon not had a great start in his Yankee career coming from the Pirates. Of course, he came off cancer 2 years ago, but $1.60 versus Washington tonight. That total 8.5 might be tasty. I like Zach Plesac a lot. Reds are terrible. Of course, the Dodgers and Angels tonight in Anaheim. Angels coming off the 4-game sweep, Casey.
Yeah, I'm not going to play Dodgers Angels because don't get me wrong, I love Urias, but I just feel like this particular series is one where you end up getting burned. It's kind of like when you bet against the Padres in years past before they became more of a household name. And inevitably on Sunday, they would win that day game no matter how good the team they were playing is. I think it could be the case here with the Dodgers and Angels. And again, LA is hard to figure out. I mean, what would we say, 4-13 or something in their last 17? Is that what the record was?
Yep.
So they're going to get good, and they're going to probably have a thing where they tear the leather off the ball and go 14-3 or something at some stretch. I just don't know if it starts with their Southern California rival tonight. And then lastly, Chris Flexen. I mean, come on. Can I get that in camera shot here? Flexen. I mean, that's a pretty good name for a Major League Baseball pitcher. 2-1, 3.33 ERA. And the Rangers are still feeling out that ballpark. That's why the total's at 8.5 and Texas minus $1.15. So many different ways to play, folks. That's the beauty of this game. You got your run line, your totals, your first five, you name it. And if you're going to be betting on a guy like a Blake Snell, you probably do want to look at first five. You're probably praying you can find a first four somewhere, Vasu, but those don't really exist offshore.
Off the 7-inning games, God, if they had a first four, we'd all, our heads would explode if that was the case. Monday, Thursdays, and Fridays, we're here live on Facebook, on our YouTube pages as well, 4:15 Eastern, 1:15 Pacific. Download, subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify seem to be the best, but Google, iHeart, and SoundCloud also as well. Charlie on assignment. I'm Vasu Vadaparty, Casey Freelove. Make the Money and Run podcast powered by Stables Media. We're back in 30 seconds to hit the NBA weekend as the regular season starts to wind down. Some of these teams are playing as if they're playoff games right now, and that Washington-Toronto game proved it last night. Back in 30 with the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, May 7th, 2021. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasu Vadaparty, Casey Freelove here. Charlie on assignment, powered by Stables Media. Every Monday, Thursday, and Friday, 4:15 Eastern, 1:15 Pacific, on Facebook and all the YouTube pages live. Download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeart, and Google as well. Send us comments if you want on Facebook or the YouTube page. Also email us, mtmarpodcast@gmail.com. All of us have social media pages. We post a lot there. We share a lot there as well, too. We're starting to get a nuts and bolts of baseball wagering. The end of the regular NBA season as we get to it right now. The last few games coming up. Bottom half of the conferences, Casey, 6-10 in each conference, starting to play their games as if they are playoff games to make sure that they get in. Don't know if they want to be in the play-in tournament or not. I guess they'll be happy at the end of the way it goes. But the NBA, as we have it, the first half of the schedule tonight, we'll have up here. Philadelphia 7.5. I still think they're the best team in the East. Because they play defense. You never know what you get with Milwaukee, though. Milwaukee's hot right now. 226.5 against New Orleans at home. Celtics, 4-point favorite at Chicago. Chicago, a big win over Charlotte. That helped their case getting back into the play-in tournament because Charlotte's right there at number 7 or number 8. 224.5. Boston coming off some wins here lately, and then Jason Tatum's starting to feel healthy again too. 224.5. The Houston Rockets, 232 the total. I know Milwaukee scores a ton of points at home. 232 if they play any defense. Not sure Houston will get to 100. 16.5 against a pro team. Charlotte 7 at home versus Orlando. 215 there. Orlando's been eliminated. Charlotte trying to maintain their position in the playoff race. Miami 6.5 versus Minnesota. Don't underestimate that Timberwolves offense. Defensively, they're very challenged. Miami had a tough loss early in the week. 226.5 the total there, and that's the reason because Minnesota scores a lot. Miami does not score a lot. First half of the schedule today, Casey, your thoughts?
Well, we talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show and also on my radio show when you joined me, the playoff push. And this is going to be fantastic from a fan perspective once we get there because, look, we've seen it a lot in Major League Baseball in years where wild card teams ended up winning the whole thing. And I'm not going to be surprised if we see perhaps an upset, maybe the 7 versus the 2 once we get through the play-in tournament, a team that's playing so hot and wants to get in. And if we're looking for teams that might fill that bill, you talked about it, the tees headed to break. The Washington Wizards, they finally clawed their way into that 10 hole. Yes, they're 31-36, but they can score with anybody, as they showed last night. Desperation and getting the win in Toronto. And this team is playing at such a frenetic pace, Vasu. They've had the schedule not really be in their favor thus far as late in the season, back-to-backs, playing 3-4 games in 1 week, which the NBA is trying not to do. But Russell Westbrook just doesn't even care. He's like, look, I already averaged a triple-double for the season if I don't do anything else the rest of the year. So I'm going to be in fine shape. And I think that they're a team to watch as far as that scenario you were talking about. You mentioned the big point spread there with the Bucks and the Rockets. Typically, early on and midway through the season, I shy away from those big point spreads. But last night, I hit an easy winner with the Golden State Warriors minus 14.5 against a Thunder team that is just basically done with their season. You got to imagine the Rockets kind of fill that scenario as well. And of course, damn you, Vegas, you put it just high enough that I'm like, ooh, are they really going to win by 8.5 baskets? I don't know. That's a lot, man, to try and get it done. But it is a good way to kind of keep us as gamblers on our toes. And this whole thing is not done being shaken out. You mentioned the Celtics in the East. They've moved into the 6th spot. That is so critical right now because the Heat in the 7 hole are at 35 and 31 as well. So they're dead even as far as win percentage. The Hornets at 32 and 34 have enough time that they can move up a little bit as well. And I think the Wizards are just desperate to try and get in. And if it's Wizards Pacers in that first round 1-game play, and I'm taking Washington all day for sure. So tonight, the Pelicans and Sixers, I will have a play on this game. I think this total is off a little bit. And the thing that I like is the public doesn't like my pick. And you know what we always say on this show, fade the public. So hopefully I'll be correct when we get to the picks portion of the broadcast. And then Magic Hornets, 2 teams. I mean, the Hornets obviously are fighting to get their way in. That one doesn't intrigue me quite as much. But I want to talk a little bit about the Milwaukee Bucks, kind of the elephant in the room. The team in the preseason everybody thought was going to be the clear-cut favorite to win the East. That's before we knew that the Brooklyn Nets were building a superhuman team that can't ever play together with all their bits and pieces. But Milwaukee's really rounded into form. 23-10 at home, 42-24 on the season, and they're getting whatever they need out of Giannis. I mean, this guy's amazing. He's averaging over 56% field goal percentage on the year. They're averaging almost 120 points at home and outscoring their opponents by over 6 points per game. Meanwhile, Houston is 8-23 on the road. So it's kind of hard to make a case that they're going to have a chance to win, but maybe they can hang in there and cover that. Last 10, Bucks 7-3, averaging 122. Rockets 2-8, averaging 106. So if we take a look at the total, I would imagine Vegas already did the math for me. It's going to be, right around there. Opened at 230.5. Now sitting at 232, getting ready for the game.
I'll be interested in the Hornets game actually because I'm curious to see how they're going to play going into the last week of the season because it looks like they will make the playoffs. Those Washington Wizards, boy, they were down 13. That line changed. I don't know if you noticed it. I got it when we did our show. Bought a half at +3, and I was going to win it no matter what, but it ended up going all the way to -1.5 for Washington, and it took it up. It took an overtime basket. I forgot who scored the basket, but it took an overtime basket, a lot of free throws at the end, and they let Toronto hit a 3 at the buzzer. They didn't let them hit it, but Toronto hit a 3 at the end of the game. Regulation forced that into overtime. Washington did cover. If you had it late and you had it -1.5, you were sweating out a 13-point deficit all the way through overtime, watching the overtime, waiting for that last shot to miss at the buzzer for them to win by 2 to cover a -1.5. Go ahead, Jesse.
Want to mention another thing on Charlotte, who you just talked about. Their road into the playoffs is not, paved in gold, if you will. Yes, you've got a winnable game against Orlando tonight. Then you've got to host the Pelicans, host the Denver Nuggets, who nobody wants to play, host the LA Clippers, then go at the Knicks and at the Wizards. This is not the way that you draw it up if you wanted to have an ideal playoff scenario, my friend.
Well, some of these teams, like I said, they're cruising in the playoffs, and if they take them lightly, Charlotte can score with anybody. I think Terry Rozier is very underrated. I know Gordon Hayward hasn't had a good year coming over from Boston, but they've got some guys that can shoot on that team. I know Devontae Graham's been hurt, but guys can play offense. It's a matter of who plays defense. We'll probably bang that drum for another month through the playoffs, and we'll all talk to basketball guys. That'll say the same thing, too. All right, second part of the schedule before we get to NBA notes. Dallas, they won last night, right? I think they did win. They beat the Nets last night. Okay. Dallas -10 versus Cleveland, 219.5. The Phoenix Suns are at home. How about the New York Knicks? According to my math, they're in the playoffs. I don't know why they don't have an X next to them. Right. They're in the playoffs, 6.5 favorite against the Knicks, 216.5, which is kind of low as far as some of the totals we've seen. Big game of the night. Denver at Utah. Utah 4-217. Denver, of course, all the injuries. Utah trying to figure out their rotations and see how healthy Mitchell is going in. And then San Antonio in the 10 seed, 5-point favorite. They watched the Warriors win last night. Memphis lost at Sacramento, 223.5. We know about Sacramento's defensive problems. Of course, I don't know if De'Aaron Fox is back yet. I don't think he's back yet from the COVID, but 223.5 the total for the game tonight in Sacramento. What do you think about this back half of the schedule, Casey?
Well, I mean, Nuggets, Jazz, it's good. It's a division rivalry. Utah 5-4 against opponents in the Northwest Division. They're third in the league, only giving up 107 points per game. But the Nuggets are 8-1 against opponents from the Northwest Division. Denver giving up only 109. And I think why you see that total has been adjusted down a little bit. It opened actually, Vasu, very interesting at 219.5 as of this morning. The public saw it and jumped all over the under. Now it's sitting there at 215.5. A 4-point move is nothing to sneeze at when you're looking at it. That means that both the Sharps and the public might be taking a look at that game, and it's going to be a great game. Look, Jokic is making his push for the MVP, and maybe he should be there. You talked about Utah really at this point just wanting to set their rotation, ensure that they lock up that 1 seed so that they can be home for the duration of the playoffs. If they've started letting fans back in. Both teams playing well in their last 10, especially Utah being 6-4 with Donovan Mitchell having that ankle issue and Mike Conley dealing with a hamstring. I love Quinn Snyder. I mean, the guy has just been a phenomenal coach for them. And this, it's really a battle of 2 coaches that I'm a big fan of. Former Kings coach, who, of course, Sacramento let leave, Michael Malone, just leading Denver to new heights and maybe a team that has a chance to actually win the championship. This one's kind of tough to hash out as far as where I would go with my cash on this. The public is looking at Denver getting 4 points at 53% clip. So 53% of the money is on Denver +4. 60% of the cash is on that over. And I want to ask you about that over. 215.5 seems kind of low, but if you buy into what I was talking about, my hypothesis earlier today, we are going to go start seeing a lot more of these games 110 or under, right around 100 as we get towards. And I think this could be really the first Western Conference low-scoring playoff field game we've had in a while tonight because these are 2 of the best.
I think so. And without Jamal Murray there, a lot of their offensive players have been hurt. Denver played pretty good defense. That total came nowhere near against the Lakers. Last Sunday night or Monday night when they played in LA, they lost to the Lakers at 4.5-point favorite. But it is a big game of the night. I'm gonna have it on somewhere on a monitor or somewhere on my laptop while I'm watching Padres Giants tonight. Some of the other NBA notes that we talked about. Just want to kind of recap it a little bit. That Philadelphia's hosting New Orleans. What do you think about Philadelphia, Casey, coming in? They're better defensively than Brooklyn. Brooklyn not playing tonight, but Philadelphia needs to maintain that 1 seed. They're going to have to play defense, and Embiid's going to have to continue to play well. Ben Simmons has played okay. He still doesn't have a jump shot, but they've got Tobias Harris, and they've got guys, Seth Curry as well as there too, but they play a lot of defense, and I think if you play defense never takes a possession off. Shooting comes in and out, and I think that's going to be the case. Miami tries to slow Minnesota. We talked about Minnesota's offense. They don't play very good defense. Miami needs a couple of wins here to secure their spot in the top 6. And then the Mavs off their win with Brooklyn last night, hosting the Cavs. We talked about the Knicks visiting Phoenix. San Antonio. Talk about the Kings, not the Kings, but San Antonio and Sacramento tonight, because that is a big game with the Warriors off tonight, Casey.
Yeah, well, let me go back to the 76ers and tell you why they are going to get the 1 seed in the East. They will be the 1 seed, in my opinion. Winnable game against New Orleans. You mentioned, you kind of broke down what the matchups are individually, but then the rest of the schedule, very nice. Home against Detroit, at Indiana, at Miami, then back-to-back against Orlando at home to finish off the season. That to me looks like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'd say 4-2 at the very least, and I think they will secure the 1 spot. I'm buying them. I mean, I am big on the 76ers. I'm going to put some cash on them to win the Eastern Conference, just getting shy of 4-1. Wish I would have got them at 5-1 a couple of months ago, but I think it's a team you and I have both monitored and talked about on and off the broadcast. We still are feeling them out. And then when Embiid got hurt, he went from being the automatic MVP to like, well, is this guy going to be okay for the playoffs? And that'll be something we have to monitor. As far as tonight's other matchups, I did want to comment on Knicks and Suns. If we weren't having Jazz and Nuggets, this would be the must-watch game because the Knicks have certainly blown everybody's expectations out of the water. We talked about it yesterday, covering at a 64.6% clip. That is not something any of us saw coming into the year, but Phoenix is very good at home, 25-9 in home games, and also important to note, 21-7 in games decided by 10 or fewer points. The Knicks need to improve their ball distribution a little bit. They're a little ball hoggish, if you will. That might be the Kentucky Wildcats in them because they've got so many guys from UK. But you also talked yesterday about Julius Randle, who's been nothing short of magnificent. It's a great matchup. 7-3 Phoenix in their last 10. Knicks 8-2 in their last 10. Both teams averaging right around 116 points. And this is one where maybe, despite the fact the Knicks kind of feel like an under trend play, and I've been talking about playing unders, this might be one where you go over because you've got a lot of, pent up teams that really haven't had a chance to break out and be in the spotlight in so long, Vasu. And tonight could be an opportunity. Maybe they be the lead highlight on SportsCenter if this game turns out to be a good one.
No doubt about it. We'll get to the picks here in a second. Vasu Battle Party, Casey Freelove here. Charlie O on assignment, make the money and run every Monday, Thursday, and Friday. 4:15, 1:15 Eastern, Facebook Live, all the YouTube pages, etc. Let me talk for a minute here about hockey. We're not going to spend a lot of time. I told you yesterday, we're not going to spend a lot of time on hockey. In fact, I changed the banner here for today with the hockey lines. These are all the favorites at -1.5 goals. So you can see the difference between $2 favorites and $3 favorites and close to even favorites just on the wins and losses. The Avalanche are +190 versus Detroit at -1.5. They're 175 on the line. Washington +115. That's a good rivalry with the Flyers. Tampa Bay, my team in the East. Tampa Bay +160 versus Dallas. That's a tough matchup. 5.5 under. Both teams have good goal scoring. Arizona +215. The game's -110 either way. To pick a side, if you want to lay a goal and a half on the road at San Jose, you get 215 there. And then Minnesota, my favorite hockey bet of the year. I've had it 3 times and 3 winners. And it'll be on my picks, is the under in the Minnesota-Anaheim game, under 5.5. Anaheim can't score. Minnesota playing really well. But you lay a goal and a half there, it's -120. So for all of you that like hockey, that like to bet a little bit on hockey, look at the goal lines. If you think you got a close game there, take the goal and a half back. If you think you got a blowout, lay the goal and a half, or you're thinking empty net might be there. St. Louis has played better, but Vegas is home +145, -1.5 as well. And then the home teams, yesterday, the home teams were -770. Today, it's dropped down to -180. That tells you a little bit about the matchups with the favorites of 2 road teams right here. And then the over-under 40.5 for the Grand Salami. So it'll be interesting. We'll start talking a little bit more hockey, but I would start paying attention. Right now is when you're going to find out who the hot goaltenders are. Right now, you're going to find out when all the good defensive teams are going to start playing as we get to the playoffs. The goal lines, the puck lines are important. And then these over-unders, as you get closer to the playoffs, will start coming down from the 6.5 to 6s and 5.5. Very rarely will you see 5 based on offenses because it's like basketball. They don't check people like they used to anymore. So that's just the way it goes in hockey. All right, Case. Go ahead, Case.
It's also been a fun week. I mean, I don't really follow hockey that closely, but my God, the violence, just the pure physical aggression between the Rangers and the Capitals was nothing short of just joyous. Vasu, there's no other sport on earth where literally you can drop the puck and every guy drops all their equipment and just starts swinging at each other just violently. I mean, there were so many fights going on in that game that I don't even know how the referees were able to clean it up.
Right at the face-off, the Rangers and Washington went at it because the Rangers got fined their GM got fined $250,000 for complaining to the league that for the fine to begin with because they dropped the ball on the violence that was taking place, on the hitting that was taking place, and so Washington took it into their own hands. They dropped the ball on that Tom Wilson hit, and Washington decided to take it out on the Rangers, or the Rangers decided to take it out on Washington for that hit because nobody got fined. The only fine that was given was to the GM for criticizing the officials on ice for not making the call, and that's why they went at it. And that's how you solve things sometimes. You go at it right on the ice, right at face-off. I think everybody knew it was going to happen, and that's the NHL dropping the ball because if they want less contact in the sport, then those officials start better calling those checks on the boards and better start calling those tripping and cross-checking penalties because if you're worried about people getting hurt or you have those in the rules, you got to make that call. Otherwise you're going to have incidents like that the other day on the ice. So we'll be talking more about hockey as we go. I get excited toward the playoffs. Unfortunately, my Blackhawks will not be there, but NHL playoffs are still fun to watch as we get through. All right, last 5 minutes of the show. I'm going to give it to Casey here for his picks as we get going here.
Well, I've been off on assignment for a little while, but just kind of updating the 8-5 in baseball this year. It's okay. It's an okay win percentage. I'm in an effort to do better.
You're leading your division at 600.
Yeah, exactly. It's a 60-40 sport. I'm right there hovering. Basketball, I combine my NBA and college, 45 and 31. I mean, you're winning units if you're playing these plays, and I've got a pick from each league tonight. I will take the under 226.5 in that Pelicans Sixers game for reasons that you and I dabbled in earlier tonight. As far as Philadelphia's defensive efficiency, New Orleans has been a little bit under their season average in the last couple of games. And I know they've got Zion. I know the game's on TV, so there'll be a lot of eyeballs on it. But I just feel like right now is that sweet spot where you can really find opportunities to find totals that are set so that the public will bet the over, but actually end up kind of cruising in under, a la last night with the Pistons and Grizzlies. That wasn't even close to 222.5. So give me the under in the Pelicans Sixers. And then for reasons I laid out earlier, I like Plesac on the mound. I like that it's going to be a cold and rainy night, kind of out of an Edgar Allan Poe novel there in Ohio. I think this game stays under 8, even if the Indians end up blowing out the Reds. A 6-1 final score, a 5-2 kind of thing. But I do think this game will stay under the total of 8. So for whatever reason this week, I've played 3 unders, and we'll see if I can't cash all 3 of them. Why not?
No doubt. Reds, Indians under 8. Reds have struggled offensively. The Indians coming off their 4-game sweep. Pelicans, Sixers. Embiid's got a matchup. Zion might get his points, but defensively on the perimeter, the Sixers are really good, and I think that'll stop New Orleans from shooting the ball from the outside as well too. But Embiid's got to match up with Zion Williamson and keep him under 30 if that's going to be the case. So good job there. And of course, you mentioned Memphis, 9.5-point favorite at Detroit. And what do you know? Detroit comes back and beats them right there. All right, a few picks here. Don't think I can do it all in one sentence without a period or a comma, but I'll try anyway. Miami minus 136 in Major League Baseball. I love Trevor Rogers. Great pick. 7.5 Atlanta, Philadelphia. Both bullpens struggling. I think after Zach Wheeler threw yesterday, Philadelphia's bullpen will be all right. I almost took Philadelphia in the game, but I just don't have confidence in them on the road yet. Over 7.5. Giants at home plus 132. Vescalfini in that park at night is going to be a great pick for them. Blake Snell, maybe by the 4th or 5th inning, we'll start walking guys as we documented. I am going to go with the White Sox at minus 149 tonight with Carlos Rodon. He's been the best pitcher on that team right now. Lance Lynn's been hurt, and hopefully, they start picking up some wins and start going there. Cleveland Indians, for all the reasons Casey mentioned in terms of their the under, I'm going to go with Zach Plesac. I think Zach Plesac will be able to shut down the Reds offense, who's struggling right now. NBA, Phoenix and New York under 216. Knicks pace is very low, right around 102 possessions a game. And I think that under Phoenix's defense is playing well. They're still trying to keep up with Utah or stay ahead of Utah in the Western Conference. Speaking of Utah, I'm going to take the Utah Jazz minus 4 over Denver. I just think Denver's injuries are probably going to be too much, and Utah's starting around in form. And I think Utah tonight, I think they want to kind of establish themselves as a top team, and they'll take out Denver minus 4 tonight. And then 2 NHL games, as I said. I love Tampa Bay. I'm going to go with them at minus 145. And then I talked about Minnesota and Anaheim under. It's a great play. If you're a hockey guy, go with the under. Hockey gal, hockey guy. Under 5.5 on the Minnesota Wild and Anaheim Mighty Ducks. That's going to be a big weekend to go into with 2 days off. I figure I'll give you like 9,000 games to go that with. Why not? What the heck? I'm on a kind of a roll right now. One update, Cubs 3-1 over the Pirates, 2 outs in the top of the 9th inning. Come on, let's get that out. Let me start out 1-0. Casey Freelove here, Vasu Vada Party, Make the Money and Run podcast. Charlie on assignment. We'll be back on Monday with 4:15, Monday, Thursday, and Friday next week with more previews of the NHL, NBA, MLB, some NHL as well, too. Check us out on Facebook at Stables, all the YouTube pages and everything, and also download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the games. It's a big weekend. Casey, you have a great weekend. Charlie, hope you're feeling better. We'll see you on Monday or Thursday next week. And have a great weekend, everybody. And good luck with everything. Good luck with all the games. Tune in to Fox tomorrow for San Diego, San Francisco. And enjoy. Good luck. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday, 4:15, right here on Make the Money and Run. Take care, everybody.